I never imagined the night my husband looked at me across our quiet bedroom would change everything. It started like any other evening, soft music, dim light, the faint smell of dinner still hanging in the air. But something about his eyes told me he wasn't thinking about work or tomorrow. He was watching me, almost studying me. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, careful. "I can't stop thinking about something," he said. At first, I thought it was about us, the bills, the house, the usual things couples talk about. But when I asked what he meant, he hesitated. His fingers traced invisible shapes on the sheets before he finally looked up and said words that took my breath away. "I want to see you, with someone else." For a moment, everything inside me froze. I laughed, waiting for him to smile, to tell me it was some strange joke. But he didn't. His face stayed still, calm, searching mine for understanding. It wasn't anger that hit me, it was confusion. I'd loved him for years. I'd been loyal, devoted, patient through every distance and silence. Why would the man who once couldn't go a day without touching me now say that? I didn't answer him that night. But when I stood under the shower later, I couldn't get the words out of my head. I pictured what he'd said, not in detail, but the idea of being seen again, seen through his eyes, but in a way that scared me. It wasn't about betrayal. It was about curiosity. About a part of me I'd buried. Days passed. We didn't bring it up again. We laughed, had breakfast, folded laundry. Everything looked normal, but beneath it all, there was a quiet storm. I could feel it every time his hand brushed mine, every time his eyes lingered too long. A week later, I asked him if he'd been serious. He nodded. "It's not that I don't want you," he said softly. "It's that I want to understand something about us. About you." There was no anger in his voice, only honesty. It made me nervous, but also strangely alive. That night, we talked for hours. For the first time in years, we spoke without fear. About desire. About the things we never dared to say aloud. About the versions of ourselves we'd hidden behind the walls of routine and comfort. He asked me if I'd ever thought about being with someone else. I told him the truth. I had thought about being seen by someone, not touched, just noticed. He didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting that answer. "If you ever do," he said quietly, "I want to be there." Something inside me shifted. It wasn't about permission. It was about trust. We didn't talk about it again for days, but it lingered in every glance, every kiss. And then one night, I made a decision. Not from pressure, but from curiosity. I wanted to understand what he saw when he looked at me. So, with trembling hands, I created a profile. No photos. No names. Just words. Honest words about a woman who wanted to feel alive again. I didn't expect anyone to respond, but they did. Most were noise. But one message stood out: respectful, calm, patient. His name was Ethan. My husband, Mark, read every word with me. There were no secrets. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time. When I finally met Ethan, it wasn't passion that I felt, it was control. For the first time in years, I decided how I wanted to be seen. Mark sat silently, eyes steady. He didn't interfere. He just watched, not out of jealousy, but fascination. When we drove home later, he reached for my hand. "You looked beautiful tonight," he whispered. That night, we didn't talk much. But when he kissed me, it was different. Deeper. Real. Weeks passed. Then came Daniel. Older, kind, gentle. He reminded me that tenderness was powerful. After him, there was Cole, young, reckless, unpredictable. And finally, Ryan, bold and confident, someone who pushed me to confront the parts of myself I never wanted to admit existed. Each one showed me something new, not about love, but about me. And through it all, Mark was there. Watching. Learning. Loving in a way that felt both distant and devastatingly intimate. Sometimes, I'd catch him staring at me afterward, eyes wet, jaw tight. I couldn't tell if it was pride, pain, or something in between. But he never told me to stop. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe neither of us could. Because beneath all of it, the fear, the risk, the unspoken tension, something incredible happened. We started talking. Really talking. Not about what happened, but about who we'd become through it. He told me that seeing me that way didn't make him love me less. It made him see me as whole, alive, free. And I began to see him differently too, not as the man who asked for something unthinkable, but as the man who was brave enough to face it with me. Then, one night, he asked the question that brought it all full circle. Would you ever be ready to let it all happen at once? I knew what he meant. My heart raced. I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had once been so guarded, and I saw no fear there. Only truth. Are you sure? I whispered. He nodded. That night, I didn't feel shame or hesitation. Just a strange calm, the kind that comes before a storm you've already chosen to walk into. The hours that followed weren't about the others. They were about us. About the space between who we were and who we'd become. About trust so deep, it almost hurt. When it was over, the silence was deafening. The men left quietly. The door closed. And for a long moment, it was just us again, husband and wife, standing in the wreckage of something both broken and beautiful. Mark didn't speak right away. He just looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. When he finally whispered, his voice trembled. You're beautiful when you're like that. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Instead, I just reached for him, and he for me. In that moment, there was no shame, no regret. Just two people who had wandered too far into something they didn't fully understand, and somehow, found each other again in the middle of it. Some people would call it madness. Others would call it betrayal. But to us, it was something else entirely. It was truth, raw, unsettling, but real. And sometimes, that's the only thing a marriage needs to survive.